On January 5, 1942, Thailand did something unthinkable for a small Southeast Asian kingdom. It officially declared war on the United States and Great Britain. But 3 years later, as the smoke cleared from the atomic ruins of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Thailand didn't find itself occupied or dismantled like Germany or Japan. Instead, the Thai government simply announced that their declaration of war had been null and void, and the Americans actually agreed. So here we can't help but wonder how a nation that allowed the Japanese troops to march through its streets and launch its own invasion of Allied territory managed to emerge from the biggest conflict in human history with its sovereignty intact. To understand this, we have to look at a unique survival strategy. The Thai call it placing both feet on a rocking boat. Western historians call it bamboo diplomacy, the art of bending so low with the wind that you never actually break. Let's dive into the unconventional yet skillful diplomatic navigation of Thailand during World War II and discover how the Land of the Smile managed to survive this conflict by essentially playing every side at the same time. The year is 1932 and the streets of Bangkok are witnessing the end of an era. A small group of military officers and civil servants, calling themselves the promoters, has just ended the absolute monarchy in Thailand in a near bloodless coup. Among these men are two figures who will define the next decade of Thai history: Pridi Banomyong, a brilliant idealistic lawyer, and Phibun Songkhram, an ambitious army officer. At first, they are allies united by a desire to modernize a kingdom they all see as stagnant. But as the 1930s progress, their paths diverge in a way that will eventually save their country and nearly destroy it. Phibun is a man of the times. He looks at the rising stars of the 1930s, Mussolini, Hitler, the Japanese militarists, and basically most of Europe, and saw a blueprint for a modern, militaristic Thailand. He becomes Prime Minister in 1938 and immediately begins remaking Thailand in the image of a fascist state. He even changes the country's name from Siam to Thailand to emphasize a Thai-first racial identity. He issues cultural mandates that dictate everything from how citizens should dress to how they should eat. He even publishes vitriolic essays comparing the local Chinese minority to the Jews of the East. And Phibun isn't just playing dress-up with fascism, he's looking for conquest as well. He sees the British and French empires, which have been bullying Thailand for decades, beginning to crumble in Europe. At the same time, Phibun decides that Japan is the new master of Asia. And in the game of survival, the Thai Prime Minister is ready to bet everything on the rising sun. As a proud nationalist, he wishes to take his revenge after the concessions made to Great Britain and France during the age of imperialism. Because at the very end of the 19th century, Siam had to give away half of its territory to avoid a full annexation by European powers. He looked for a way to get those lost territories back, and in 1940, history gave him the perfect opportunity to do so. By 1940, France had just fallen to Hitler's blitzkrieg. The French colonial administration in Indochina is suddenly orphaned, weak, and vulnerable as mainland France becomes a Nazi puppet regime. So Phibun, wishing to take back the lost territories in Laos and Cambodia, decides to strike. Urged on by Japan, Thailand launches a series of border skirmishes that escalate into a full-scale invasion of French Indochina. On land, the Thai army performs surprisingly well, pushing deep into Cambodian territory. But at sea, the French Navy delivers a humiliating blow at the Battle of Ko Chang, sinking several Thai vessels. On a side note, one of the men fighting on this theater is a future French novelist that you surely know better by his books than by his name. This author is Pierre Boulle, writer of The Bridge Over the River Kwai, inspired by tragic and true events I will mention later, and Planet of the Apes. So, after that naval battle, the diplomacy starts to get interesting. Japan steps in as the mediator. They pressure the weakened French to cede large swaths of territory to Thailand. The delighted Phibun returns to Bangkok as a national hero, erecting the Victory Monument that still stands in the heart of the city today. But there is no such thing as a free lunch. By accepting Japan's help to regain his lost provinces, the Thai Prime Minister has essentially signed a pact with the devil. Thailand is now firmly in Japan's debt, and Tokyo is about to come to collect. The collection notice arrived on December 1941. Just hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces launched a simultaneous invasion of Thailand at 9 different points along the coast. And the timing couldn't have been more chaotic. Phibun is away from the capital, touring the new conquered provinces, and while the Prime Minister is missing in action, local Thai police, soldiers, and even high school students in the Yuwashan military youth movement engage in desperate sporadic firefight with the landing Japanese. When Phibun finally races back to Bangkok by car, he realizes that resistance is useless and ordered an immediate ceasefire. And the Japanese aren't demanding a total surrender yet. They just want passage through Thailand to hit the British in Malaya and Burma. So Phibun, ever the pragmatist, decides to lean into the wind. He doesn't just grant passage, he formalizes an alliance. By late December, he signs a mutual defense pact at the Temple of the Emerald Buddha. And by January 1942, he declares war on Britain and the United States. And to the outside world, Thailand was now a fascist satellite state. But while Phibun is shaking hands with Japanese generals, a second boat is being launched in the shadows. While Phibun is all in on Japan, his old partner, Pridi Banumyong, is horrified. He is kicked out of the cabinet and promoted to the position of royal regent, a prestigious but powerless role acting for the young King Ananda, then living and studying in Switzerland. It's a move intended to sideline him, but instead, it gives to Pridi the perfect cover to start a revolution. From the heart of the government, the royal regent established the Seri Thai, or the Free Thai movement. This was a clandestine network of bureaucrats, journalists, and even some military officers who loathed the Japanese alliance. And they faced incredible risks. Pridi's first two groups of messengers sent to contact the Allies in China simply vanished. The third, a journalist named Shamkat Balankura, made it to Chongqing only to die under very mysterious circumstances in a hospital, possibly poisoned by Chinese intelligence who wanted to control him. Meanwhile, halfway across the world in Washington DC, the Thai ambassador, Seni Pramoy, received the official cable from Bangkok, declare war on the United States. And Seni looks at the paper, looks at his staff, and effectively says no, refusing to deliver the declaration to the US State Department. According to the legend, he simply locked the cable in his desk drawer for the duration of the war. Instead, Seni tells the Americans that the Thai government is acting under Japanese constraints and doesn't represent the will of the people. He helps the Americans organize efficiently the Seri Thai. They recruit Thai graduate students in the US and Britain, train them with the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, the precursor to the CIA, for a mission that seems like a one-way trip, infiltrating their own occupied country to spy on the Japanese. By 1943, the bamboo is bending in two directions at once. On the surface, Thailand is a loyal Japanese ally. Phibun government sends an army north to occupy the Shan states in Burma, fulfilling his dream of a greater Thai empire. But beneath the surface, Bangkok is a nest of spies. Pridi, operating from the royal palace itself, has become the secret leader of the Free Thai underground. Using the codename Ruth, he coordinates a network that eventually swells to over 50,000 members. Despite the losses, by 1944, the OSS started parachuting agents into Thailand, and the situation was absurdly dangerous. Allied agents are being parachuted into the Thai jungle, rescued from the Japanese, and hidden in government's building, right under the nose of the Japanese military police. The OSS agent Nicole Smith later wrote about being fed lavish multi-course dinner by Thai officials, while Japanese officers were literally in the next room. And the most fascinating part, Phibun almost certainly knew what Pridi was doing. He was a dictator with a massive secret police force. He wasn't blind, but he didn't stop him. Why? Because Phibun was a master at bamboo bending. If Japan won, Phibun was their man. If the Allies won, he had Pridi as a get-out-of-jail-free card. It was the ultimate national insurance policy. But, as you might imagine, the war wasn't all secret diners and bamboo diplomacy. For many, it was a walking nightmare. Japan needed a way to supply its forces in Burma without relying on shipping lanes controlled by Allies submarines. So their solution was the Death Railway, a 300-kilometer line through some of the most treacherous jungle on Earth. While Pierre Boulle and Hollywood focused on Allied POWs in the bridge on the River Kwai, the real horror was experienced by the 250,000 Asian laborers pressed into service. Tamil, Japanese, and even some Thai died in droves from exhaustion, malnutrition, and disease. On top of that, more than 13,000 Allied prisoners also perished. So, as the stories of the sick and dying filtered back to Thai villages, the public mood began to sour. The Japanese liberators were starting to look a lot like brutal occupiers, and the Thai people were beginning to wonder if Phibun had backed the wrong horse. By 1944, even a child could see the wind was changing. In the Pacific, the Japanese were winning battles closer and closer to their own island. Meanwhile, in Thailand, the economy was plummeting. Japan has borrowed huge sums of gold and was paying for Thai rice with worthless paper currency. Inflation skyrocketed, and Allied bombers were turning Bangkok's train stations into scrap metal. And Phibun, sensing the coming collapse, scrambled for an exit strategy, but he was too closely tied to the Japanese. So in August 1944, he was forced to resign. His replacement was a man named Kwang Apai Wong, a man nicknamed the Comedian for his ability to joke his way through tense situations. And Kwang's job was, perhaps, the most delicate in Thai history. He had to convince the Japanese he was still their loyal ally, while simultaneously clearing the way for Pridi and the Seri Thai to help the Americans. And in the meantime, the Japanese were getting suspicious. In March 1945, they had arrested the entire French administration in Indochina in a sudden and violent coup. Everyone in Bangkok was waiting for a similar fate, but Kwang used his masterful wit and direct personality to keep the Japanese generals off balance, buying the resistance the precious months they needed. When the atomic bombs ended the war in August 1945, the Thai government didn't wait for a summons to a peace conference. They moved first. Pridi, as regent, issued a royal proclamation declaring that the 1942 declaration of war was null, void, and unconstitutional, because it went against the will of the people. It was a bold, almost cheeky legal maneuver, and the British were not amused. Winston Churchill and the British leadership felt stabbed in the back. They had seen their battleships sunk in the Gulf of Siam and viewed Thailand as an enemy that had enabled the fall of Singapore and Malaya. Because of that, they demanded a massive indemnity, 1.5 million tons of free rice, and the right to station British troops in Thailand indefinitely. For a moment, it looked like Thailand was about to become a British protectorate. However, the US had a different perspective. The years of secret work by the Seri Thai and the undelivered declaration of war paid off. The Americans, who had grown very fond of their Thai spy partners, stepped in. They insisted that Thailand was an occupied country that had worked for the Allied cause. Under intense US pressure, the British backed down. With that, the free rice became rice that Britain had to buy, the Allied troops left, Thailand's pre-war borders were restored, and the kingdom became the first former Axis ally to be admitted to the United Nations. This way, Thailand avoided the brutal post-war occupations that hit Japan and Germany, largely because they had spent the war meticulously preparing for the day they would need to switch sides. Thailand's journey through World War II is rarely taught in Western textbooks, because it doesn't quite fit the neat narratives of good versus evil. It's a story of pragmatism over ideology, of survival at any cost. Phibun Songkhram, the fascist dictator, was eventually jailed as a war criminal, but he was released just a year later. The Thai courts decided they didn't want to prosecute their own leader for foreign demands. He even returned as prime minister a few years later, remaking himself as a staunch anti-communist ally of the United States. But Pridi Banomyong, the hero of the resistance, didn't fare as well. He was forced into exile just years after the war, following a mysterious palace tragedy. In the end, Thailand escaped the destruction endured by its neighbors. Its navigation of World War II remained a masterclass in pragmatic survival. It wasn't always a heroic story, and it certainly wasn't a simple one. It was a story of bending so far that everyone, the Japanese, the British, and the Americans, thought there was the one holding the end of the bamboo. But was this bamboo diplomacy a brilliant masterstroke of national survival, or a cynical betrayal of every alliance they ever made? If you were the leader of a small nation caught between two warring giants, would you choose to stand firm on principle and risk total annihilation, or would you place both feet on a rocking boat? Let me know in the comments. In the meantime, thank you for watching this episode in this series about Thailand. More untold pages of history are on the way, so if you do not want to miss any, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. These, as you know, help tremendously. This is Forgotten Fragment. Until next time, for the next story.